So I read an article this week about Luka Doncic and how some players in the NBA don't really want to play with him because of his play style. And Luka Doncic kind of plays that play style that we saw James Harden play when he was winning MVPs back in like 2017, 2018. So I went and did a bunch of analysis and I figured I'd bring some of it to you. And you guys can decide if you would want to play with Luka or not. So this is the article in question here. And now I should preface that this isn't necessarily like a would you want to play with Luka, but it's more so, is this an effective way to actually play basketball? My experience in the professional and college coaching realm, done a lot of film study, a lot of analysis, especially on the offensive side of the basketball, at least with some of my later teams that I played with. So I figured what we could do is we could look at, I have a bunch of tabs open right now of things I want to show you guys, but just some interesting things that I want to compare, as well as just stepping away from stats a little bit and just looking at straight film, what I see, and we can kind of go from there. But in principle, the article is kind of talking about like, hey, Luka's so ball dominant that it's not very fun to play with him. Like, you're kind of just waiting for him to do things at all time. And so that's what maybe drove guys like Kyle Kuzma from declining that trade to Dallas, which that's just a weird situation in itself, right? Like, when has a front office ever been like, hey, are you cool with us trading you here? Like, why? I don't know. That just, like, that's really nice of them, I guess. But like, that just doesn't seem very team interested. That seems very Kyle Kuzma interested. And like, are you really that invested in Kyle Kuzma? Whatever. We're talking about Luka Doncic. But yeah, no, Luka plays a very isolated style of basketball. His usage rate is incredibly high, and usage rate is going to be a big thing that we talk about in this video. Usage rate is essentially how much does a certain player end a possession for a team, meaning you took a shot, you turned the ball over, whatever it is. If you ended the possession, that's what calculates into your usage rate. So if we look at usage rates this season alone, Luka Doncic, I have a filter on here just because I'm like, we need to have people that have actually played serious minutes. So Luka Doncic, for people that have played serious minutes, is basically second in the NBA behind only Joel Embiid, who's actually 3.2% higher than him, which is a pretty big difference. But Embiid gets used like crazy, or was used like crazy, excuse me. And then it drops off from Luka to like Giannis, and then you get into Shea, all the guys you expect to have the ball a ton, like LaMelo, Ant, because there's not any other people that can dribble on the team. Look at this. Wembanyama, 31%. Isn't that kind of interesting? Doesn't it feel like he never gets the ball? Stats are interesting, man. Stats are real interesting. So I wanted to compare this to James Harden, right? Because that's really the only other instance where we've seen somebody kind of play this style of basketball, at least at the guard position, right? And if you look at this, 35.4, 35.3, the exact same, not the exact same, 0.1% difference in usage rate of James Harden's MVP season to what Luka's doing right now. And Luka might just win MVP this year now that Embiid is gone. That's a whole nother topic, and I'll probably do a video on that at some point. It's probably the appropriate time to start talking about MVPs. But that's interesting, right? These two extremely ball-dominant guards who you trust to run almost your entire offense, they're basically playing the same style of basketball right now. Something I wanted to show just as well during that MVP season, James Harden, his usage rate stayed about the same. The only person who was higher than him during that playoff run was Russell Westbrook, and that was that year where he was by himself just dragging that really like, they were young bum OKC Thunder teams. Like, it was like him, Oladipo, Sabonis, Steven Adams, like dudes like that, right? And he was just carrying that team through the playoffs. So he had the ball basically all the time, despite whatever effectiveness he had. But let's take a look at a little bit of Luka Doncic basketball. So I was actually watching this game when it was happening, and I figured this would be a good example of things. Some of the things I want to show here, like these are just some of Luka's shot attempts that he's taken in the game. We're seeing just an initial clear out here. We've got three guys. There was a little bit of like just kind of nonsense action to kind of get people moving between Kleba and Kyrie, as you can kind of see up here. Josh Green literally just sitting in the corner, hands on knees. Like, you would hope that he has his hands up ready for like a little swing around pass here. And honestly, he should be backdooring. Kids, if you see the backs of your defender's head, that's a backdoor and an alley-oop dunk every single time. Well, kids, maybe you're not getting the dunk, but you're getting a little pocket pass that turns into a layup. But if we fast forward, it turns into a little pick and roll. Luka takes a step back three, right? Like, these guys over here didn't get to move necessarily at all. We can go on to the next clip here. These next couple clips are interesting. So going into a pick and roll here, my thought initially just by watching this is that maybe it's a disguised Spain, but nope, just a normal pick and roll. Josh Green still just sitting in the corner. You have the same distraction action going on between Kleba and Kyrie. He gets left alone, right? Not a ton of movement if you're not the guy setting the pick for him to get his initial kind of movement towards the hoop going, because that's always Luka's goal, right? Is to get going towards the hoop first, and then after that he kind of delegates to the step back. Obviously, with a final option being kick around to the corner, something like that, swing the rock, etc., etc. Alrighty, next clip here. Luka's just working by himself. There's not even any movement. We have Dwight Powell in kind of a far dunker spot, and we'll talk about Dwight Powell actually later in this video, I'm thinking, but just ISO basketball, right? Just clear out. And all the best players in the league get these ISO opportunities, right? Like that's just how it works. But let's see here. Okay, starting off, now this is disguised Spain. I can already tell they pretended like they were going to do a little bit of that distraction action we were talking about. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to that same right corner where nobody ever gets to move in this offense. So Dwight Powell's going to set this screen, and I can already tell you what's going to happen is Derrick Jones Jr. is going to come and try to screen Hartenstein so that Luka can try and get an alley-oop to Powell. We'll see how that works out. Derrick Jones Jr. just kind of doesn't even set the screen. Like kind of just misses it. He ends up getting himself open though, because Miles McBride, being the young guy he is, doesn't realize that's the action he got into. But again, Luka ends up in this situation here, takes a tough shot. Nobody really got to do anything. Josh Green got to end up in the corner yet again, right? We'll go through one more example, whatever this next clip is. We've seen this exact same action already, so perfect, right? It's pretty repetitive. Is that Markieff Morris? Yeah, it's Markieff Morris starting that initial one. You have the distraction action. Kleba, Tim Hardaway Jr. Is that Josh Green again sitting in the corner? Yep, hands on knees. Oh, wipes his hands this time. Oh, maybe gets his hands up a little bit because he thinks he's going to get it. But again, all eyes on Luka, right? Kleba, smart enough, starts to cut here because he sees Taj Gibson's head here. But anyway, right, like there's not a ton of other action going on. Luka missed him there. It should have been a pretty easy pass for a dunk, and Gibson knows he messed up a little bit there. But yeah, no, like in essence, that's a lot of what their offense is. It's an initial action, some nonsense on the side to keep people moving, so they have to keep turning their heads like this, and then it's kind of just do whatever. After that, just wait to see if you're going to get to catch the ball. So we see why maybe that's not the most fun style to play. And, you know, people might make the, or ask the question, I should say, like, hey, why doesn't someone else get to handle the ball a little bit and Luka works off ball? We know that's a great way to win basketball games. Look at Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, right? Well, over Luka's career, there hasn't really been a ton of other, like, guards on the team that can handle the ball. So some of that's on the front office for maybe not finding more guys to do that. Obviously, Kyrie Irving's on the team now, but his usage rate isn't necessarily dropping at all. Like they kind of just let Luka do his thing most of the time. And even when he doesn't have the ball, he's kind of just standing at the coach's hash. So it's not maybe the most interesting style of basketball, but can it be effective is the question. Now, me being the offensive, I don't want to call myself offensive minded because I'm going to yell at you more for defense in practice. Like that's just me being me. But I look at offenses very intensely compared to like defensive schemes. So looking at Luka this year, 34.2 points per game, 9.5 assists, 8.8 rebounds. He's getting a lot of career highs in things, right? That's awesome. And that's with Kyrie Irving playing on the team and stuff too. And like they've had other scorers on the team. Tim Hardaway Jr. gets buckets too. Like they've got dudes on this team that go and get buckets. So clearly like it's working for Luka. The efficiency is like good, 37% here. Obviously the free throw percentage could always go up. Luka's never been over 80%. I heard that the other day. And that's just so interesting. Maybe he's thinking too much. Maybe he's just feeling rushed at the free throw line. I don't know. Somebody could correct that. If you got that up to like 85% or something, you might be scoring like 38, 39 points a game. Pretty nuts to think about, really. Again, does this contribute to winning basketball? Well, this year it does. On court right now, Luka is plus 2.8, and off the court, Dallas is minus 1.8. Now, that shouldn't come as much of a surprise. Like, Dallas isn't an incredibly talented roster outside of Luka and Kyrie. And while like Kyrie does his thing on the court and everything, like the team's clearly better with Luka. That plus 4.6 differentiation, it's hard to talk right now, is it's a big difference, right? Like that's enough to win you or lose you a lot of basketball games in this competitive NBA season. So clearly the team is better with him on the court, and they're good with him on the court. Let's take a look at Luka in the 2022 playoffs. That was the last time we saw Luka in the playoffs. They had the deep playoff run. Obviously, they didn't make the playoffs last year. An even greater differentiation, +5 difference from when he's on the court versus off the court. Winning basketball team when he's on, not winning basketball team when he's off. Compare this to James Harden in his MVP season, kind of going back to that. Look at this. On the court with James Harden, +10.5. Absolutely nuts. And actually off the court, Houston Rockets were so good, and that was the year they almost went to the finals and stuff, right? So still +5.2. That's just them having a good team. But then look at this. 2018 playoffs. People give him a lot of crap for some of these series where he kind of, ran out of gas and stuff, but +6.7 when he's on the court, -13.4 off. A 20-point on-off differentiation. Huge, absolutely huge. So clearly there's winning that can take place with this style of basketball. It's kind of the analytics dream style of playing basketball. Something I saw in college basketball a lot that I always bugged just the shit out of me is that in like college basketball hasn't changed in like 20 to 40 years. Honestly, you've probably heard JJ Redick talk about this, and I can confirm with you that's true. Like, you ever see those guys do that real basic like weave at the top of the key in college basketball? Like, they just keep handing it off to each other. Like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, I've never understood that. Like, they're like, oh yeah, we're trying to get some motion, trying to see if we can get some penetration. Like, what are you, the Globetrotters? Stop it. You get the ball to your best player to start the possession because that's what math tells you to do, and that's the best way to start a possession. What you do after that is up to you. You get into some pistol action, you get into some pick and roll, maybe even some Iverson action in college because you like to work in that area of the court. But teams don't do that. And so the style of giving these guys the basketball to start a possession is something that the college game needs to probably adapt. Do you need to do it as hard as Luka does it here, or James Harden did it back in the day? That's kind of up for debate. I personally think some of the best basketball gets played when it's a lot more team-oriented. Look at the Heat, look at the Warriors, things like that. I was on a team in college who was the #1 offense out of Division 1 through 3 for like a couple years in a row. And we played a much more like team style offense. Like, we had big man hubs where they were kind of running the offense at times, and we were doing handoffs and having our elite guards kind of move off the ball and things like that. So I'm always going to be a little more partial to that. But I think the math tells us that we can win some basketball games like this because you can try to guard Luka in the playoffs like this, but clearly like he's still going to find a way because he's that good. And with Kyrie Irving on the team now, I don't know. I don't think you can do that because you can't always bring two to the ball then. Like, you're leaving somebody open. And so you have like a Tim Hardaway Jr. on the court too that's going to be a capable shot maker. If Josh Green's going to be a capable shot maker, hopefully PJ Washington gets there. You have constant lob threats now. That's a big difference. Like, all you really need is defenders around those guys, and you can win some games. Currently, the Mavs sit at 7 right now, and they're a game behind the Pelicans. Shout out the Suns, man. They're starting to figure it out. Warriors and Lakers are starting to climb a little bit, too. That makes sense. Like, everything regresses to the mean eventually. But, the Mavericks have a ways to go. Obviously, they just added some of that new talent. I think it's going to be valuable to them. One thing I did want to look at just before while we're talking about Luka and everything is I wanted to go to his lineup numbers here because I'm almost positive we're going to see a correlation to Grant Williams. Yeah. So you look here, his top 2 lineups that he played with were with Grant Williams. Not good, not bad necessarily. You take Grant Williams out of the equation and you put in Kleba, plus 25.6. Grant Williams was in this one. That was with Derek Lively. All right, so that one wasn't bad. This one, you take Grant Williams out again, and he's solid. He's got a lot of defenders around him here. Yeah, no. So I think being able to have like Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford around him at all times, PJ Washington instead of Grant Williams, I think it's going to be a lot better. Grant Williams was not a very good defender this year, very inefficient offensively. So I think just having another athlete, guys that can go out and defend a little bit more, having constant rim protection whenever the Mavericks want throughout the game now is just awesome. And I think it can contribute to some winning basketball this year in the playoffs. Now, what does this mean about players not maybe wanting to play with Luka? That's kind of up to the player, right? I mean, yeah, it might be boring. You're not really necessarily going to get yours on this team, right? I mean, we can go to the Dallas Mavericks team page, and you're just going to see there's not a lot of touches to go around on a team like this. Let's take a look at their points per game and stuff like that, right? Like, Tim Hardaway Jr. gets his. Daniel Gafford is kind of an anomaly because he came from the Wizards, right? But then it's like it's 9 points, it's 9 points, it's 9 points, it's 9 points, right? It's whoever is in those corners when Luka decides to pass it to it, like we watched on the film. So that's kind of what you get. Whether or not you want to play with that, I guess, is kind of up to the player. But I could see maybe why players don't want to play with them. But in my opinion, they can win some basketball games with this. Do I think maybe they should find a way to mix in some Luka off-ball stuff and maybe make his life a little bit easier because this style of play is incredibly hard to maintain? Yeah, probably. Maybe you should try to figure something out, Jason Kidd. But for now, it's working. They're winning basketball games and they're learning to play with their new players. So, yeah, I hope it works out for Dallas. I like watching Dallas. I love Luka Doncic. But yeah, no, just thought I'd investigate this with the rest of y'all, and y'all could kind of see how my coaching brain ticks with this stuff. But thanks as always. If you want more videos like this, or if you have any other topics you want me to explore, let me know. I'll do a deep dive kind of on it. But yeah, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks so much, y'all. Bye.